Good morning. Welcome to the biblical explanation for the 27th Sunday in the Ordinary Time, Year A. The Gospel reading is from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 21, verses 33-43. This is the parable of the tenants. However, the reading of this parable should not end in the verse 43, but should be extended up to verse 46, because those verses include also the reaction of the chief priests and the Pharisees, who after hearing this parable, they perceived that he was talking about them and they tried to arrest him. The same parable appears also in the other synoptic Gospels, in Mark chapter 12 and in Luke chapter 20. And as usual, each evangelist presents the same story or the same parable somehow in a different way. In all these three cases, the parable ends with a hostile reaction after hearing this parable. There was a householder, some translate, there was a landowner. In Greek we have two words, a man and householder. The word ekodespotes, householder, appeared also in the parable of the workers in the vineyard in chapter 20, but the combination of these two terms, a general term, man, and specific term, a householder, we found at the end of the parables in chapter 13. The list of activities who planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it and dug a wine press in it and built a tower, the image and the list of these activities recalls a text of Isaiah chapter 5 verses 1 up to 7. Let me sing for my beloved a loved song concerning a vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones, and planted it with choice pines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it, and hew out a wine vat in it, and looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I look for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. And I will make it a waste, and it shall be not pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. And I will command the clouds, that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasing planting. And he looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold a cry. There is a striking similarity between this poem and our parable, the metaphor of vineyard used for the nation, for the people of Israel, and the owner who takes care of his own vineyard. Therefore, it would be not a surprise for the chief priests and the Pharisees to understand that Jesus is applying the same image of vineyard with the same understanding. And let it out to tenants. Some translations render the Greek word georgos in other ways as farmers or vineyard workers. The Greek word georgos is a compound word that expresses the idea of someone who is tilling the ground. The elements of this parable are clear that those tenants, farmers, represent the leaders of the nation as chief priests or Pharisees, while the servants of the householder are the prophets which are sent to them. In verse 35, I made my own translation, trying to reflect the way of expression proper to the Greek text, which seems to be monotonous because repeating the same word which I rendered here by one. One they beat, one they killed, and one they stoned. Now in verse 39, to be pointed out the order of actions taken against the son of the owner who represents Jesus, and taking him they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. In Markan version of this parable, firstly they kill him and then they throw him out, while in Lucan and Matthew version, firstly they cast him out and then they kill him. In this way we could say that Lucan version and the Matthew version indicate the way how Jesus will die, that he will die outside the city of Jerusalem. This pronouncement of Jesus about his own death is like a prophetic pronouncement, and it is interesting that the Lucan and Matthew version, which are similar as regards this pronouncement, and also in conclusion about that the leaders of the nation fear the people, but only Matthew adds at the end that they fear the people because they considered him as a prophet. In verse 42, Jesus answers to them, quoting from the Psalm 118, "The stone that the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. This happened from the Lord, and it is marvelous in our eyes." The head of the corner is the Revised Standard Version quite literal translation of the Greek expression, while some other translations render it just by cornerstone. At the beginning of the exposition, I mentioned that the reading in the lectionary ends at the verse 43, so it leaves aside the following verses, including verse 44, which directly refers to the cornerstone, to the head of the corner in verse 42. Reading in verse 44, "And the one who falls on this stone will be dashed to pieces, and it will crush anyone on whom it falls." This stone is the cornerstone of verse 42. Just regarding verse 44, one technical information, but there is also a textual problem, that this verse is not included in some manuscripts. Therefore, some modern translations like Revised Standard Version or New Jerusalem Bible do not contain it, while some other translations put it within the brackets. However, the most ancient manuscripts have it, therefore it should be considered as authentic. The idea of the stone that is crushing of verse 44 recalls the text of Isaiah in chapter 8. "But the Lord of the host, him you shall regard as holy, let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he will become a sanctuary, a stone of offense, a rock of stumbling to the house of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many shall stumble thereon. They shall fall and be broken, they shall be snared and taken." The metaphor of stone applied to God who destroys his enemies, unfaithful, like here in the text of Isaiah, as well also the tenants in our parable. This idea also is taken in a first letter of Peter in chapter 2, but it combines it also with the positive idea of the cornerstone. In particular, when we read verses 6 up to 8, we see this combination. "For it stands in Scripture, Behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone chosen and precious, and he who believes in him will not be put to shame. To you therefore who believe, he is precious, but for those who do not believe, the very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner, and a stone that will make men stumble, a rock that will make them fall. For they stumble because they disobey the word, as in our parable, the unfaithful tenants, disobedient tenants, the cornerstone becomes for them the stone of destruction. And this follows the classical way of retribution present in the Bible, blessings for the faithful and cursing and punishment for the unfaithful. Now yet few words about the literal setting of this parable in comparison with the other synoptic gospels. In all these three gospels, this parable, as well also the question about Jesus' authority which precedes it, it is after the glorious entering of Jesus to Jerusalem. So we have it already in the Passion setting in all the three synoptic gospels. In Mark and Luke, the parable of the tenants follow the question about Jesus' authority, while in Matthew, there is additional parable which we had the last Sunday, the parable of two sons. So in other words, Jesus answers to the leaders of the nation when they are asking him about his authority using these two parables. Wishing you a nice day, a good reading of the Gospel according to Matthew.